weren't supposed to find what was behind the sealed doors of St. Mary's Hospital. What you're about to see is the unedited footage from our exploration last week. The hospital administration claimed the East Wing was permanently closed due to structural damage, but we discovered something far worse. As we descended into the basement level, our equipment began malfunctioning. The map showed nothing below the first floor, but we found stairs leading down. Temperature readings dropped 15 degrees in seconds. Something followed us back. Watch the doorway at 023. We didn't notice it until reviewing the footage at home. The shadow moves against the wall, but none of us were standing there. 2 members of our team haven't slept since that night. We keep seeing someone standing at the foot of their beds. The doctors say it's just trauma, but the same figure appears in different places in our homes. We're sharing this footage as evidence of what we encountered. The most disturbing part isn't what we found in the hospital, it's what found us. St. Mary's Hospital was abandoned in 1988 after a series of unexplained patient deaths. According to local newspaper reports, 17 patients died in a single week in the East Wing psychiatric ward. The official cause was listed as respiratory failure, but former staff members tell a different story. The hospital's architecture is unusual, designed by Alexander Thorne, who was known for incorporating strange geometric patterns into his building. The East Wing forms a perfect pentagram when viewed from above, a detail missing from official blueprints. As we entered through an unlocked service entrance, the air became noticeably thicker. Our MF detectors immediately registered activity despite the building having no power for over 30 years. Listen carefully at 2:15. You'll hear a whisper saying they're back. None of us heard this during our investigation. The main lobby still contains original furniture, patient intake forms, and abandoned medical equipment. Most disturbing were the patient clipboards, some with notes dated 1992, 4 years after the hospital closed. This floor map shows the East Wing was sealed off with concrete barriers in 1989 following an incident that hospital administration refused to discuss. While checking the map, we noticed a door that shouldn't exist according to the plans, a heavy metal door with unusual locks and symbols etched into the frame. As we approached this door, all 3 of our cameras captured a dark figure watching us from the 3rd floor window. When we checked that room later, we found it empty but inexplicably cold. The 3rd floor contained the hospital's administrative offices, untouched since the day it closed. While searching through filing cabinets, we discovered patient records that shouldn't exist. People admitted years after the hospital was abandoned. The records described experimental treatments authorized by Dr. Malcolm Reeves, head of psychiatric research. When we opened one particular file labeled Project Threshold, all 3 cameras captured the shadow moving across the hallway behind us. We've analyzed this footage frame by frame. The shadow has a distinct human shape but moves at impossible speeds, crossing the 20-foot hallway in less than half a second. The patient files contain consistent reports of hallucinations, each patient describing the same figure watching from the corner of the room. More disturbing were the doctor's notes indicating these weren't considered hallucinations but expected side effects of the breakthrough. At 4:27, pay close attention to the abandoned wheelchair near the nurse's station. It moves slightly backward before a strange orb of light appears above it. We've ruled out dust particles or lens flare through multiple camera angles showing the same phenomenon. The temperature in this area dropped from 68 to 42 degrees within minutes. Our audio equipment captured what sounds like whispered conversations coming through the air vents, though the ventilation system hasn't functioned in decades. While examining a patient logbook, the pages began turning by themselves. The book opened to an entry dated June 17, 1987, which simply read, "They're coming through." When we attempted to document this, our primary camera battery instantly drained despite being fully charged. That's when we heard it, a loud banging noise coming from behind the sealed doors of the East Wing. The sound pattern was rhythmic, almost like communication. 3 knocks, pause, 5 knocks, pause, 3 knocks again. None of us were prepared for what happened next when we approached those doors. Watch our genuine reactions as the temperature plummeted and all our equipment began registering impossible reading. Something was responding to our presence. We managed to track down Edward Jenkins, who worked as head janitor at St. Mary's from 1975 until its closure. He initially refused to discuss the East Wing, visibly shaking when we mentioned Dr. Reeves' experimental program. After much convincing, he agreed to speak off camera, allowing only audio recording. According to Jenkins, there were rooms we weren't allowed to clean. Rooms where they took patients at night. We could hear the screaming through the walls. After they sealed the East Wing, some of us still heard voices coming from inside. That's why they poured concrete over the doorways. During our investigation, we discovered these original hospital ID badges and patient wristbands scattered throughout the abandoned rooms. Several wristbands belonged to patients who, according to official records, were transferred to other facilities before the hospital closed. Yet Jenkins claims no patients were ever transferred out. This newspaper photograph from 1986 shows Dr. Reeves standing with his research team. Looking closely, there's an unexplainable blur where the assistant director should be standing. Hospital staff reportedly refused to enter that particular laboratory after the assistant director disappeared. All 17 patients who died during that final week were part of what hospital records called Project Threshold, an experimental treatment program using a combination of sensory deprivation and unspecified medications. Their death certificates list identical times of death: 3:17 a.m. When reviewing our footage, we noticed something we missed while in the building. At 6:45, look at the nurse's uniform hanging on the hook in the background. It moves slightly as though someone is wearing it, but there's nobody there. The most disturbing connection we discovered was that the hospital's unusual layout creates perfect geometric intersections where all unexplained events occurred. Dr. Reeves' personal notes suggested these confluence points could be used to thin the veil between worlds. As we approached the sealed wing entrance, something bizarre happened to our equipment. Every battery pack drained simultaneously, cameras, lights, and audio recorders all failing within seconds of each other. The temperature around us plummeted from 67 degrees to 52 degrees in less than a minute. Our thermal camera captured the rapid temperature change spreading like a wave across the hallway. When we finally got our backup power running, we discovered our static camera in the lobby had changed position, though nobody had been in that room for over an hour. We've enhanced and slowed down this footage to show you exactly what happened. The tripod moves 3 inches to the left and rotates 7 degrees, all by itself. At 8:45, listen with headphones. There's a clear voice saying, "Open the door," though none of us heard it during filming. We set up a motion-activated camera in the same location, and within 20 minutes it captured this strange mist forming in the center of the room. When viewed frame by frame, the mist appears to take a humanoid shape before dissipating. What's most disturbing is how our equipment failures followed a specific pattern throughout the building, forming the same symbol we later found etched into Dr. Reeves' private journals. Split-screen comparison shows normal activity on the left versus the paranormal disturbances on the right. Notice how the anomalies seem to track our movements, almost as if something is watching us through our own cameras. The digital distortion that appears on our footage matches patterns reported in other haunted locations, but the intensity is unlike anything we've encountered before. After hours of searching, we discovered a hidden key cabinet in what used to be the security office. One key was labeled East Wing Access, exactly what we needed to open the sealed door. The moment we inserted the key, a cold blast of air rushed past us, and this black mist began forming around the door frame. All 3 of our cameras captured it from different angles. There's no way to explain this as dust or vapor. The movement is too deliberate, too controlled. As the door swung open, our flashlights began flickering in a synchronized pattern. We tested them afterward, and they worked perfectly once we left the area. Beyond the doorway was a corridor untouched for decades, yet strangely free of dust. The patient rooms were still fully furnished with personal belongings left behind as if the occupants had vanished mid-activity. We set up an EVP session in what appeared to be Dr. Reeves' private office. When we asked, What happened to the patients in Project Threshold? Listen to what we captured. Multiple distinct voices responded simultaneously, saying what sounds like we opened it. None of us heard these voices during the session. The temperature in the room dropped to 41 degrees, and this medical cabinet behind us opened by itself when we asked about the experiments. Inside, we found vials of an unidentified substance and journal entries describing thinning the veil between worlds and controlled passageways. As we examined these journals, one of our team members felt something touch his shoulder. When we turned around, no one was there, but the thermal camera showed a distinct cold spot in the shape of a hand on his jacket. This represents the strongest evidence we've ever captured. Multiple phenomena occurring simultaneously across different recording devices. We decided to explore a different section of the hospital, the children's ward on the second floor. The atmosphere here felt completely different from the rest of the building. While the East Wing carried a sense of malice, this area felt sad, almost mournful. As we entered the main playroom, our audio equipment picked up what sounds like children laughing and playing. Though the hospital has been empty for over 30 years, the sound wasn't constant. It would fade in and out, always seeming to come from just around the corner. Several abandoned toys were scattered across the floor, including a wind-up music box that suddenly began playing by itself. The melody was distorted, playing at roughly half the normal speed. As we moved through the ward, all of us began feeling lightheaded and disoriented. The camera work becomes shaky here as our team struggled to maintain balance. It felt as if the hallway was subtly shifting around us, though the footage doesn't fully capture this sensation. At 14:17, something truly inexplicable happened. The large window overlooking the nurse's station, covered in decades of dust, suddenly displayed small handprints that appeared out of nowhere. We immediately checked for any possible explanation. Dust falling from the ceiling, water condensation, tricks of light, but found nothing that could explain what we witnessed. Pause the video at 14:25 and look carefully at the glass behind the handprints. You can see what appears to be a small figure watching us from the other side, though there's no accessible space behind that window. When we attempted to open the door to that area, we found it had been sealed shut with the same unusual locks we saw on the East Wing entrance. After comparing the official hospital blueprints with the actual building layout, we discovered significant discrepancies. Several rooms exist that aren't documented on any plans, including a large circular chamber beneath the East Wing. We consulted audio specialist Dr. Helen Marquez to analyze the EVP recordings we captured. Her analysis revealed something unprecedented. The voices contained frequencies outside the normal human vocal range, some as high as 20,000 Hz D. She also identified what she called layering, multiple voices speaking in perfect unison, a phenomenon she described as statistically impossible without electronic manipulation. We mapped all paranormal occurrences throughout the building and found they created a specific pattern. The cold spots precisely matched locations where patients reportedly died during Dr. Reeves' experiments, forming a geometric shape when connected. The temperature anomalies weren't random. They followed the same pattern throughout the hospital, always coldest in the rooms where patients spent their final hours. During our analysis in one particular hallway, we all heard footsteps slowly approaching the camera. The sound grew louder over 30 seconds, creating unbearable tension, yet nothing visible appeared on camera. However, our thermal imaging revealed a heat signature moving steadily toward us, stopping just feet away from our position. The building's unusual architecture seems deliberately designed to create these confluence points where paranormal activity is strongest. Dr. Reeves' journals repeatedly mention these intersections as windows or doorways. Most disturbing was our discovery that every investigation team before us experienced identical phenomena in the same sequence and locations, as if something is using human curiosity as a trigger. What's your theory about what's happening in this hospital? The evidence suggests multiple entities, but there seems to be something else controlling or directing them. After witnessing the unexplained phenomena in the children's ward, our camera operator Mike refused to continue deeper into the hospital. While the rest of us explored the third floor, he remained in the main lobby to monitor our base equipment. What happened to him there changed everything about our investigation. 20 minutes after we left him alone, Mike radioed us in panic. When we rushed back downstairs, we found him visibly shaking, unable to speak clearly. Once he calmed down, he described feeling cold hands touching his shoulders and back. He turned around expecting to see one of us, but instead saw a full-bodied apparition for approximately 3 seconds before it vanished. Fortunately, his camera was recording during the entire incident. We've enhanced the brightness and contrast of this footage. Watch carefully as a shadowy figure appears behind Mike, clearly visible for several frames. Most interesting is how the figure casts a shadow on the wall, yet doesn't fully materialize on our digital media. Notice the distortion around the edges, almost like the camera couldn't properly process what it was recording. Our night vision camera set up across the room captured the same event from a different angle. The thermal imaging is even more compelling, showing a cold spot in the exact human shape moving across the room toward Mike. The temperature in that specific path dropped to 38 degrees while the rest of the room remained at 65. After reviewing this evidence, Mike noticed something else. His notebook contained writing that wasn't his. Scrawled across an empty page were the words "they're still here" in handwriting that matches samples we later found in Dr. Reeves' journal. This type of physical interaction with an entity is extremely rare in paranormal investigations and represents some of the most convincing evidence we've ever documented. With our courage bolstered by what we had captured, we decided to investigate the most restricted area of the hospital, the operating theater where Dr. Reeves conducted his experimental procedures. According to the records we found, this is where all 17 patients died during that final week. The moment we stepped through the doorway, all of our equipment malfunctioned simultaneously. Cameras glitched with strange digital artifacts. Audio recorders captured nothing but high-pitched static. The thermal imaging camera showed the entire room at a frigid 34 degrees despite it being summer. Most disturbing was the operating table in the center of the room, which still contained leather restraints and unusual equipment not typical of standard medical procedures. As we moved deeper into the room, the heavy metal door slammed shut behind us with incredible force. None of us were near it, and there are no air currents in this sealed section of the hospital that could explain it. The door wouldn't reopen despite our efforts, effectively trapping us inside. What happened next defies explanation and was captured on all cameras simultaneously, though with significant distortion. Surgical tools on the side table began vibrating, then moving across the surface without any physical contact. The lights in our equipment flickered in perfect synchronization, forming what appeared to be a code or pattern. The MF detector registered readings off the scale beyond anything we've encountered in previous investigation. The temperature continued dropping until we could see our breath in the air. Then, our audio equipment captured dozens of overlapping whispers coming from all directions at once. The cacophony built to an unbearable level before suddenly stopped. That's when we saw it, a full manifestation at the doorway leading to the adjoining room. The figure moved toward us with unnatural speed, appearing to float rather than walk. All 3 cameras captured it from different angles before cutting out simultaneously. When our equipment regained power 30 seconds later, the temperature had returned to normal, and the door we couldn't open was standing wide open. After analyzing all the evidence we collected from St. Mary's Hospital, we've developed a comprehensive theory about what happened then. Dr. Reeves wasn't just treating psychiatric patients, he was using them as test subjects in experiments designed to access other dimensions. The hospital's unusual architecture wasn't coincidental. Historical records show the building was designed by Alexander Thorne, a known member of an occult society that believed certain geometric patterns could thin barriers between worlds. The symbols we found etched into door frames and hidden beneath wallpaper match exactly those in Thorne's other buildings where paranormal activity has been reported. The patient files describe breakthrough moments when subjects began perceiving entities from the other side. what Reeves called successful thinning of the veil. Most disturbing is our discovery that every investigation team before us has experienced identical phenomena in the same sequence in the same locations. It's as if something is using human curiosity as a program trigger, following a script that plays out regardless of who enters the building. The sudden closing of the hospital wasn't due to financial problems as officially claimed, but rather a containment effort after whatever Reeves opened couldn't be closed. At 25:37 in our footage, you can see one of the symbols from Reeves' journal briefly appear as a reflection in the glass cabinet, though it wasn't physically present in the room. This symbol appears repeatedly throughout our investigation, often just before paranormal activity intensifies. The 17 patients who died at exactly 3:17 a.m. weren't victims of respiratory failure. They were sacrifices in Reeves' final attempt to fully open what he called the doorway. Based on all evidence, we believe something did come through, and it remains in the hospital to this day, using the energy of visitors to gradually strengthen its presence in our world. 2 weeks after our investigation of St. Mary's Hospital, multiple team members began experiencing unexplained phenomena in their homes. Objects moving when no one is present. Strange sounds occurring precisely at 3:17 a.m. 17 a.m., the exact time when those 17 patients died. Our producer found her kitchen cabinets open every morning despite closing them before bed. Most disturbing is this footage from Mike's home security camera taken 3 days after our investigation. The shadowy figure that appeared behind him in the hospital lobby is clearly visible in his living room at 2:13 a.m. Resides in St. Mary's Hospital, seems capable of forming attachments to investigators, following them back to their personal spaces. Team members have reported feeling watched, particularly when reviewing footage from the investigation. One researcher discovered strange symbols appearing in the condensation on his bathroom mirror, identical to those found in Dr. Reeves' journal. We're now working with paranormal specialists and conducting research into protective measures before our return investigation next month. We plan to bring specialized equipment designed to communicate directly with whatever entity controls the hospital. Before this video ends, we want to draw your attention to something truly chilling. At timestamp 29:15, look carefully at the hospital windows as our team exits the building. Though the hospital has been abandoned for decades, each window shows a silhouette watching our departure, appearing simultaneously for just 3 frames of footage. Next week, we'll share our interview with the last surviving nurse who worked with Dr. Reeves, including her shocking revelation about what really happened to those 17 patients. We'll also reveal the strange markings that have appeared on team members since our visit, and the disturbing connection to symbols found in ancient texts describing doorways between worlds. Many viewers have reported unusual experiences after watching our videos, particularly sensing movement in their peripheral vision. Let us know in the comments if you've experienced anything strange after watching this investigation.